The air hung heavy with anticipation, thick with the stench of sweat, urine, and stale waste. All eyes were fixed on the lone figure standing in the center of the square, bathed in the eerie glow of flickering torches. He was a Roman senator, a member of the elite class that governed the vast Roman Empire. But Brutus had committed an unforgivable crime, an act so treacherous that it shook the foundations of Roman authority. You see, Brutus had played a pivotal role in the assassination of Julius Caesar, the most powerful man in Rome. The concept of individual rights and freedoms was alien to their way of thinking. Instead, their society was built on a rigid hierarchy, where the powerful oppressed the weak. If you were born into a lower social class, your fate was essentially sealed. The odds were stacked against you from the moment you took your first breath. But Octavian and Mark Antony were relentless. They tracked down Brutus and his accomplice Cassius, and cornered them in a small village near the Greek city of Philippi. There, in the plains of Philippi, one of the most significant battles in Roman history unfolded. As the day of his execution dawned, Brutus prepared himself for the ordeal ahead. He knew that there was no escape. His final moments were spent in prayer and meditation. His body was consumed by the flames, leaving behind nothing but ashes and the echoes of a bygone era. After the execution, Brutus's ashes were thrown into the Tiber River. His remains would forever be lost to the currents, mingling with the ancient waters of Rome. The spectacle had come to an end, but its impact would reverberate through history. The story of Brutus and the Roman fire served as a grim reminder of the lengths to which the rulers of Rome would go to maintain their power and crush any opposition. It was a display of raw power designed to keep the populace in check, to remind them who was truly in control. He reflected on his life, his choices, and the tragic turn of events that had led him to this point. Finally, it was time. They were whispered in hushed tones, serving as cautionary tales for generations to come. The memory of those who perished in the flames became a symbol of the oppressive nature of Roman rule, a stark reminder of the cost of challenging the might of the empire. The Roman fire, with its terrifying spectacle and haunting legacy, continues to captivate our imagination even today. It serves as a potent symbol of the brutality and ruthlessness of ancient Roman rule, leaving us to ponder the depths of human cruelty and the lengths to which power can corrupt. Brutus and Cassius, leading their loyal forces, faced off against the combined might of Octavian and Mark Antony. The battle raged for hours. Swords clashed, shields buckled, and the cries of the wounded filled the air. But in the end, the tide of war turned against the conspirators. Both Brutus and Cassius realized that their time was running out. They were defeated and captured. There was no room for social mobility in Roman society. Soon enough, Brutus and Cassius were dragged before the tribunal of their captors, facing charges of treason and murder. The evidence against them was overwhelming. Their guilt was undeniable, and so the verdict was swift and merciless. The condemned man was brought forward, stripped naked and tied to a wooden stake. A crown of twisted iron was placed on his head. The stake was erected and the fire lit. The flames rose higher and higher, licking at Brutus's skin. The smell of burning flesh filled the air, but Brutus didn't cry out or beg for mercy. He stood tall, facing the fire with stoic bravery. The fire raged for hours, slowly consuming his body. Throughout it all, the crowd watched in grim silence. Some were entertained, others felt a sense of foreboding. For them, this was a warning. If you defy the might of Rome, this is what awaits you. Both Brutus and Cassius were sentenced to death, each in their own unique way. Cassius was ordered to take his own life by sword, a relatively quick and painless method of execution in Roman standards. Meanwhile, Brutus was reserved a more horrific fate. He was to be burned alive, a punishment that was excruciating and meant to instill terror in the hearts of all who witnessed it. Your social standing was your cage, dictating your life, your opportunities, and ultimately your demise. And now, he was about to face the most horrific fate imaginable. Igniciti Pharaoh, fire and iron. They were branded as heretics. Being labeled a heretic was akin to being declared an enemy of the state in modern parlance. These individuals became targets of the Roman authorities, who employed every tool at their disposal to silence them. For the Romans, such spectacles were not merely a means of punishment, but also a form of entertainment. It was a way to keep the masses distracted and under control. Now let's return to our story, and the fate that awaited Marcus Junius Brutus. One of the most terrifying methods used to suppress dissenting voices was the infamous Roman fire. In the heart of ancient Rome, amidst the towering Colosseum and the bustling Forum, there existed a more sinister spectacle than the gladiatorial combats or chariot races. Suddenly, a hush falls over the crowd as soldiers appear, dragging a bound and gagged individual to the center of the square. This was no ordinary person. It was a heretic, someone who had dared to challenge the teachings of the Roman state. Without warning, the soldiers set fire to a pyre constructed from dry wood and oil placed at the heretic's feet. The flames erupted, sending a plume of smoke and ash into the air. The heretic, unable to move, could only watch in horror as the flames approached. knowing that his fate was sealed. This was the fate of many thinkers who dared to challenge the status quo. But Caesar's grandnephew, Octavian, was determined to avenge his uncle's death. He assembled a formidable military force and marched on Rome. By 43 BC, Octavian and his ally Mark Antony had gained control of the city and were ready to deal with the conspirators. They identified 40 senators who had been involved in Caesar's assassination, and decreed that they should be punished with the most severe penalty known to Roman law. Among them was Marcus Junius Brutus. It was here in this very spot that the Romans conducted their most terrifying form of capital punishment, burning people alive. Our story today begins with a man named Marcus Junius Brutus. He wasn't just any man. You see, Julius Caesar had been brutally murdered by a group of senators, including Brutus, who feared his growing dictatorship. But why was he chosen? Why did they decide to burn him alive? To understand the gruesome spectacle that awaited Brutus, we must delve into the heart of ancient Roman society. Rome was a world of stark contrasts. While the wealthy indulged in luxury and power, the poor toiled in squalor, enduring harsh conditions and meager wages. The gap between the rich and the poor was so vast that the emperors often employed cheap tricks to distract the masses. When the mob grew restless, Rome would organize events like executions and fights to divert their attention from the festering sores of inequality. The common folk, starved for entertainment, would eagerly flock to these spectacles, cheering and jeering at the unfolding drama. For the Romans, life was a constant struggle for dominance and power. Now, during those turbulent times in ancient Rome, there existed a group of people who dared to question the established order. The intellectuals, philosophers, and orators who challenged the prevailing norms and beliefs of Roman society. Imagine this: a bustling Roman square filled with people going about their daily business. As the fire raged, the crowds surrounding the square erupted into cheers and applause. Brutus, along with other conspirators, tried to flee Rome after Caesar's assassination, hoping to rally support in the provinces. According to Roman custom, the prisoners of war were given the option to spare their lives in exchange for their surrender. But this mercy was short-lived. Brutus attempted to appeal to his former allies and supporters, hoping to sway their decision, but his pleas fell on deaf ears. His fate was sealed. The square was packed. People had come from far and wide to witness the spectacle. Finally, as the sun began its descent, Brutus breathed his last. As the centuries passed, tales of the Roman fire and its victims became a thing of legend.